That's it. That's all. Bryant and Katie are back in New York, and we love you both very much.
Thanks, Willard. On Close Up this morning, Haitian refugees. The U.S. government has returned the first boatload of Haitian refugees to their homeland after receiving permission to do so from the Supreme Court. Some 10,000 others are still in U.S. custody at the naval base in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. Daniel Stein is the executive director of the Federation for American Immigration Reform. This morning, he's at our affiliate WFLA in Tampa, Florida. And Ira Kurzman is an attorney with the Haitian Refugee Center in Miami. He joins us from our Washington bureau. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Mr. Kurzman, let me start with you. How great a setback is this Supreme Court ruling for the Haitians you represent?
Well, this case is far from over. We still have to await a decision from the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. And once they render a decision, if they render a decision in favor of the Haitians, then the government will be enjoined once again. If they don't, then we will seek an emergency stay in the Supreme Court. So all the Supreme Court did is stop the injunction until the Court of Appeals had an opportunity to rule, and we expect that ruling today or tomorrow or in the very near future.
Mr. Stein, why, in your view, shouldn't the Haitians be allowed to come to this country?
Well, the point, of course, to remember is that we are admitting Haitians, over 140,000 in the last 10 years alone, as normal immigrants. In addition, some of them are being brought, a small number, but some, are being brought to Florida because they can show a well-founded fear of political persecution. But what we are trying to preserve here is the basic rule of law that this country can sustain and control unmanaged exoduses and influxes like what we're seeing here from Haiti. Florida can't withstand another shock like it took in 1980 with the Mariel boat lift, and the Bush administration went to the Supreme Court and said, look, we're looking at another 20,000 that are going to come out of Port-au-Prince unless the federal courts will allow the administration to run this program the way it's been running effectively now for 10 years.
So really, in your view, it's a matter of economics, a matter of managing the influx. How do you respond to that, Mr. Kurzman?
Well, it's ironic that Mr. Stein is talking about the rule of law, because the rule of law in this case, as the judge found, was that the government used wholly inadequate procedures to determine whether or not the Haitians on Guantanamo had claims for political asylum. This case is about two things that most Americans assume. First of all, it's about whether or not people are entitled to a fair procedure. The judge in the case who heard the evidence in this case found that the Haitians were not given fair procedure.
Well, Ira, we have not yet had a substantive decision in this case. You got to remember that until we get a decision on the merits, the final issues are not resolved. The key point here is whether or not we are going to, if you bring them all to Florida, they'll never go home. We know that from past history.
If Mr. Stein will give me an opportunity to speak, I will finish what I was saying. And the second issue in this case was whether we as attorneys representing these Haitians have a right to see them. The government has taken the position in this case that the attorneys who represent the Haitians are absolutely barred from seeing them, and that even though they know that the procedures that they used were faulty to determine whether or not the Haitians had claims for political asylum, they were sending them back anyway. What the judge did simply is to enjoin the government until such time as the government established new procedures, which, by the way, they did for the remaining Haitians. What we were complaining about is the first 3,000 Haitians. They interviewed them under circumstances where the government admitted that the interviewers knew nothing about the political conditions of Haiti.
Okay, but now the Supreme Court has said that it is okay to return those back to Port-au-Prince who can show no fear of political persecution. And
the Supreme Court has not said that, Mr. Stein.
They have said
Gentlemen,
that they have lifted the injunction, and the program needs to move forward.
Let's get to some of the broader issues, if we could. Mr. Kurzman, would you say that these Haitians are political refugees or not? That seems to be at the heart of the issue, isn't it?
That's correct, and there's no question that they are here. The ones who were interviewed under faulty procedures were people whose mothers and fathers were killed in Haiti. These are generally young men who were a part of the Aristide movement in Haiti, who had very strong claims for political asylum.
You're saying that everybody in Haiti who leaves is a political refugee. You can't say that.
That's not what we're saying at all. What we're saying is this group of individuals.
You're saying everybody who comes out of Port-au-Prince in a leaky boat who gets picked up by a U.S. flag vessel becomes a U.S. charge. And I think that's your record. You got to stand on your record.
The record in this case is
all the Haitians you represented in the last 10 years.
Excuse me, Mr. Kurzman, why don't you elaborate what you are saying?
Thank you. The record in this case, as the judge found, the judge who heard the evidence said the Haitians who would be sent back to Haiti would face death and persecution. That's the record in this case. Mr. Stein can create anything he wants.
Mr. Stein, let me ask Mr. Stein a question. How can you be certain that these people won't return to an incredibly violent military regime that might seek retribution, the Tantamaku and other violent aspects of the government. How can you be certain?
Well, you have to look at the credibility of each person. If they have some logical connexus to the Aristide administration, you want to give them the benefit of the doubt. But most of these people simply have no political activity in their background, no basis for it. We've been returning people for 10 years. You always need to be careful. We have to be very careful in the situation, no question. Well, but what Ira's trying to do is so gum up the workings of the system with these legal technicalities, getting this judge in Miami to keep issuing injunctions for reasons that I think are simply just rare bed rationale, which gum up the works. If you bring them to the U.S. and let them work and start buying property, marry U.S. citizens, history has shown they will never go home. It's as simple as that.
Well, I always thought that the right of a person to see his attorney and the right to have a fair
These
hearing
people have never been in the United
Mr.
States.
Stein, let
Ira.
Mr. Kurzman finish.
And the right to have a fair process is something that we as all Americans believe in. That's what this case is about. It's not about keeping every Haitian who wants to come to the United States into the United States. This case is about two very simple things. Fair process for these people and the right to see their attorney.
Mr. Kurzman, I'm afraid I don't have a referee's whistle. I'm just going to have to say that's going to be the last word. Mr. Kurzman, Ira Kurzman, Daniel Stein, thank you both.
Thank you.
In a moment, a dramatic look at the secrets East Germany